There's a pretty simple reason why I believe Gen Z specifically is obsessed with Oasis. And it was really after seeing them this past Sunday that I finally understood why. It's simply their authenticity. And I use the word authenticity specifically because I think it's a term whose definition, though heavily debated by professionals, has changed to become a word with a clear-cut definition on social media. So the word, again, whose definition is highly debated by psychologists, it's defined in the Psychology Today article what it means to be truly authentic as, quote, behaving in congruence with one's values, beliefs, motives, and personality dispositions. With that said, though, many on social media believe that another person, whether you're a rock star or a beauty influencer or a TikToker, whatever it is, to be authentic means to behave in a personal value set that they online have deemed, to be authentic, which is, again, their own personal morals and values or whatever it is. And again, not that person's own personal value set. It's kind of confusing. But, whether I'm watching a clip of Liam, fucking swaggering over to fight a pap, or watching Noel state to camera that he's, quote, part of the greatest band in the world, what makes, I think, many, including myself, so obsessed with watching these video clips is seeing that Gallagher authenticity. It's evident after all these years that Liam and Noel are acting in accordance to how Liam and Noel act. And it doesn't feel like today where most artists, besides a few, have completely lost that self-authenticity. And through that, lost a sense of what makes them special and unique. And it's why these, PR moments feel recycled month after month, and why whenever an artist does make a statement, it reads like it went through, a fucking dozen hands and a dozen suits before being posted on an Instagram story. And, this past Sunday night, as the lights went down and Fucking in the Bushes played, and, the screen displayed, dozens and dozens of headlines and tweets praising, the brothers getting back together. It's in your face from the start that the show you haven't even seen yet is going to be fucking legendary. And I remember I remember laughing aloud during this part because it finally felt that Gallagher authenticity was being seen in person by me even before the brothers even took the stage. So I'm like a notorious critic of LA crowds. Like I'm just not a fan of how we get down here. And I remember being really nervous about going to the show that night. And I was up by like barricades. So I was like, I knew it was going to be a vibe, but I was nervous about, the people around me. But something I quickly like found out in the multiple lines I stood in that day was how international the audience was. And I remember standing near barricade and like talking to the people around me. And it was like me and one other person were like the only people like who live here in LA. So when, in the beginning of the set, when we were doing the, the pausing for cigarettes and alcohol, and, fucking beer was being thrown and people were crashing into each other, I knew that the show wasn't going to be my typical LA gig experience. And something that I'm not hearing much people talk about specifically is how insanely smart the stage layout is. Because, it's a relatively bare stage. But with that said, I think because of that, the band lets the audience experience and feel the music they're putting out. It's really this idea that this music is for the audience rather than what's usual at most stadium concerts today, from, fucking Beyonce to Taylor Swift to fucking The Weeknd, whatever, where it often feels like there's so much flash, there's so much fucking going on stage, that it feels as an audience member that, damn, it's more fun up there than fucking where I am right now. But, with Oasis, it was different where you had this pretty mundane stage setup. The visuals were insane, but stage was pretty, mundane. But because of that, it made it so all of the fun and enjoyment and fucking excitement that I had that night was with the people around me, and it was just being backtracked by Oasis. You know, that entire night, whether I was belting out the outro to Slide Away or singing the, Octopus's Garden outro for whatever, the feeling of others' nostalgia was incredibly thick in the air. And in my opinion, the idea of nostalgia and being nostalgic, with that being such a lived experience, the specific attachment I have to Oasis isn't necessarily the exact feeling of nostalgia that I might feel while listening to music that was released, when I was growing up. I mean, the only song on the entire set list that was released after I was born was Little by Little. That was, I think, released 2002, and I was born, 2000. Despite that, though, the feeling of, thousands of other people's nostalgia for that period and for that music was infectious and did oftentimes feel tangible. And as I was leaving the show, I started making conversation with this straight tattooed English guy in his probably mid-30s. And he was very early into our conversation. He was like, "Oh my God, you're a gay American Oasis fan." And I was like, yeah. I was like, we're few and far between. I remember telling him. And I think that final conversation I had that night was a really funny full circle moment. Because just how different the two of us are shows the power that the band has held and continues to hold on multiple generations, races, sexualities, gender identities. And it shows how, you can argue it was relatively recently, that this shift occurred and that there's really no such thing anymore post-2025 as your quote-unquote average Oasis fan. So, I mean, seeing Oasis Sunday night wasn't just me, a young fan, seeing this band I really like because they finally decided to go on tour again. I think it was me having this desire and fascination for nostalgia that, though wasn't lived, was able to be shared with me by, fucking thousands of screaming and crying fans, yearning for something that, was lost. This show was literally one of the best fucking concerts that I've been to in a long, long time. I'm literally not going to shut up about this. And if you did want to read the actual full thing, you can go to my Substack, and I wrote a full essay on the whole show.